It all began on a quiet Sunday morning when I walked into the kitchen and found my husband, Daniel, whispering on the phone. His tone was light, almost cheerful, something I hadn't heard from him in weeks. I smiled, thinking maybe he was finally planning something romantic for us. But when he hung up, his eyes darted away from mine. "What was that about?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He hesitated. "Oh, just Mom's birthday plans. You know how she loves surprises." I nodded, even though deep down something didn't feel right. Daniel's mother, Evelyn, had never really accepted me. She was elegant, wealthy, and controlling, the kind of woman who smiled sweetly while twisting the knife. No matter how hard I tried, I was never good enough for her precious son. 2 days later, I found out the truth accidentally. My friend Emma sent me a text. "Hey, saw your husband and his family on the restaurant's guest list for Saturday. Big celebration?" My heart sank. Saturday was Evelyn's birthday, and apparently, I wasn't invited. At first, I thought it was a mistake, so I asked Daniel that evening, trying to hide the trembling in my voice. "Are we doing anything special for your mom's birthday?" He froze. Well, Mom wanted something small this year. Just family." I stared at him. "And I'm not family?" He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You know how she gets. She thinks you and she clash." I didn't want to start an argument before her birthday. That's when it hit me. I wasn't part of his family. I was just his wife when it suited him. My hands shook, but I smiled bitterly. "Of course, Daniel. Wouldn't want to upset your mother." But inside, I was burning. Saturday came. I watched him get dressed in his best suit, humming happily, while I sat in silence at the kitchen table. The man I loved was heading to a party I wasn't allowed to attend. A party for the woman who had spent years belittling me, and he was helping her do it. As the front door closed, something inside me snapped. For years, I'd swallowed every insult, every cold glance, every accidental jab Evelyn had thrown my way. But not this time. This time I was done being polite. I opened my laptop and pulled up the restaurant's website. Evelyn's birthday dinner was being held at Le Mirage, one of the most exclusive places in town. Booked under Daniel Harris, private family event. Perfect. With a calmness I didn't recognize, I made a quick call to the restaurant manager. "Hi, I'm calling to confirm the cancellation of the Harris reservation for tonight," I said smoothly, pretending to be Daniel's assistant. "Yes, family emergency. Please cancel the table and notify guests when they arrive." The manager apologized and confirmed the cancellation instantly. Then I waited. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Daniel's name flashed across the screen and over, until it finally stopped. When I opened my messages, I saw one from him. "What did you do? The restaurant said we canceled the reservation. Mom is furious. Everyone's leaving." I smiled. For the first time in years, I felt something powerful. Peace. Later that night, when he came home fuming, I was sitting on the couch with a cup of tea. "Rough night?" I asked sweetly. He glared at me. "You embarrassed my mother." I met his gaze calmly. "No, Daniel. She embarrassed me the day she decided I wasn't family. I just returned the favor." He didn't speak, just stood there stunned. And that silence was the sweetest revenge I'd ever tasted. When Daniel stormed into the house that night, his face was red with anger. But behind that fury was something else. Shame. Maybe he didn't expect me to fight back. Maybe he thought I'd always play the quiet, obedient wife who accepted being invisible. Not anymore. He threw his jacket onto the couch. "You had no right to cancel that dinner, Amelia." I took a sip of my tea, calm and unbothered. "No right? You mean like how your mother had no right to exclude me from it?" He clenched his fists. "She just wanted one peaceful evening without tension. You know how you two—" I cut him off sharply. "No, Daniel. I don't know. What tension? The kind she creates every time she looks at me like I'm a mistake?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, the guilt in his silence louder than any argument. For years, I'd tried to earn Evelyn's approval, cooking her favorite dishes, buying her thoughtful gifts, even dressing the way she liked, but nothing worked. She always managed to remind me in her perfect little ways that I'd trapped her son below his standards. Now, with the canceled dinner, she finally had a reason to hate me publicly. I knew I'd made an enemy, but strangely, I felt lighter. like I'd finally stood up for the version of me that had been buried under her criticism for too long. The next morning, Daniel barely looked at me. He left early for work, slamming the door behind him. By noon, my phone started buzzing again. "Unknown number," I answered. "Amelia," said the cold, sharp voice on the other end. "It's Evelyn." I almost smiled. Of course it was. She didn't waste time. "I hope you're proud of yourself. You humiliated my entire family. People were whispering about us all evening. You've caused a scene that will take weeks to fix." I held the phone to my ear and replied softly, "Funny, Evelyn. I felt humiliated long before last night, just without anyone noticing." There was a pause, a long one, before she spoke again, her tone dripping with venom. "You'll regret this, Amelia. I promise you." Then she hung up. Her threat didn't scare me. What scared me was Daniel's silence afterward. Days went by and our home felt colder than ever. He avoided me, skipped dinners, and spent longer hours at work. But deep down I knew something was shifting. He wasn't just angry at me. He was questioning himself. On the fourth night, he came home late, looking drained. "Mom's still furious," he muttered, dropping his briefcase. "She said she's not speaking to me until I apologize on your behalf." I looked at him steadily. "And will you?" He hesitated, then sighed. "No, because maybe she was wrong to leave you out." That was the first time I'd heard him say it, the first crack in his blind loyalty to her. He sat beside me on the couch, his shoulders slumped. "You know, I thought keeping peace between you two meant avoiding conflict, but I see now that I was just avoiding courage." I didn't speak. I simply placed my hand on his, not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement. Over the next week, Evelyn made sure to play the victim. She posted pictures online of a ruined celebration, talking about betrayal from within her own family. Her friends chimed in with sympathy and support, painting me as the heartless wife. But here's what she didn't know. Her little circle of friends included one person who was also my coworker, and she didn't stay quiet. By the end of the week, whispers started spreading in the other direction. People began questioning why Evelyn would exclude her own daughter-in-law from a family dinner. Screenshots of her posts began circulating, revealing her manipulative tone. The sympathy she'd gathered started slipping away, and for the first time, I wasn't the one under judgment. She was. That weekend, Daniel came to me again, quieter this time. "Mom wants to have lunch. She said she owes you an explanation." I looked up from my book. An explanation or another insult? He shook his head. "She said she wants to talk privately. Maybe this could be a start." I wasn't sure if I wanted a start, but something inside me said this wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. It was about finally being seen. So, I agreed. But I didn't know then that Evelyn's apology lunch wasn't what it seemed, and that she was about to make a mistake she'd never recover from. When Saturday arrived, I dressed simply. Nothing fancy, nothing that screamed trying too hard. Evelyn always used appearances as her battlefield, and today, I refused to play her game. My goal wasn't to impress her anymore. It was to expose her. Daniel offered to drive me, but I insisted on going alone. "If this is between your mother and me," I said, "then let me handle it." He hesitated, but finally nodded. I reached the restaurant early, Le Mirage, the same place I'd canceled her birthday dinner. The irony didn't escape me. Evelyn was already there, seated perfectly upright, her diamond earrings catching the afternoon light. She smiled when she saw me, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Amelia," she said smoothly, rising to greet me. "I'm so glad you came." I returned her smile, careful not to show the storm brewing inside me. "You wanted to talk. I'm listening." She gestured for me to sit. "Look, dear, I know things got complicated. Family misunderstandings happen, but I think we can move past this if you're willing to apologize publicly, just to clear the air." I blinked slowly, processing her words. "You want me to apologize?" "Yes," she said, her tone sugar-sweet. "It would show maturity. Everyone already thinks you overreacted. If you make a small post, something like, 'Sorry for the mix-up at Mom's birthday,' people will stop gossiping. We can all move on." Her words cut deep, not because they hurt, but because they revealed everything I already knew. She didn't want peace. She wanted power. I leaned forward slightly. Evelyn, let me ask you something. Why did you exclude me from your birthday in the first place? She laughed lightly. Oh, don't be dramatic. It wasn't personal. I just wanted a quiet dinner, with people who truly understand me. So not your son's wife? I asked calmly. She shrugged, still smiling. You're different, Amelia. You never quite fit into our world. There it was. The truth, plain and sharp. I took a deep breath and looked her straight in the eye. You're right, Evelyn. I don't fit into your world. But maybe it's because your world is built on pretense, not respect. Her face hardened. Excuse me? I continued, voice steady. I canceled your dinner because for once I wanted you to feel what it's like to be excluded. You've made me invisible for years, in your home, in your conversations, even in your son's eyes. That night you finally saw how it feels. Evelyn's lips tightened, her pride shaking for the first time. You think humiliating me makes you strong? No, I said softly. It makes me free. Just then a waiter approached the table. Excuse me, Mrs. Harris, he said. Your order from last week and the special cake? It's ready to pick up. Shall we bring it out? Evelyn looked confused. Cake? What cake? The waiter handed her a small card. I watched her expression shift as she read it. Her eyes widened. This says, Happy birthday, Evelyn. Hope you enjoy the dinner you excluded me from. Signed. Amelia Harris. I smiled faintly. Oh, that? A little gift from last week. Seems like they saved it. People nearby started murmuring, glancing at us. Evelyn's cheeks flushed deep red. For someone who worshipped her image, this was her worst nightmare. Public embarrassment, all her perfection cracked open for the world to see. She stood abruptly. You planned this. I stayed seated calm. No, Evelyn, you did. You taught me that appearances matter more than truth. I just gave you a mirror. That afternoon, I walked out of Le Mirage lighter than ever. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't insulted her. I'd simply shown her that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn. Later that evening, Daniel came home, looking uncertain. Mom called me, she said. She doesn't want to talk about what happened. I smiled softly. Good. Maybe silence will teach her more than words ever could. He sat beside me, taking my hand. I'm sorry, Amelia, for not standing up sooner. For the first time, I felt sincerity in his voice, not the forced guilt, but the kind that comes from realization. Just promise me one thing, I said. Never let anyone make me a stranger in my own family again. He nodded. Never. But what I didn't know then was that Evelyn wasn't done. She wasn't going to let me win that easily. And her next move, her final attempt to destroy me, would come from somewhere I least expected. For a few weeks, everything seemed peaceful. Evelyn stopped calling, stopped posting, stopped interfering. The silence was so complete that even Daniel believed the storm had passed. But I knew her too well. Evelyn was like a fire under ashes, quiet, but waiting for the perfect breath of air to ignite again. That breath came one Thursday afternoon when I received a call from Daniel's office manager. Mrs. Harris, she said hesitantly, I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know. Your husband's company received an anonymous email. It contained personal information about you, things that could damage your reputation. My stomach dropped. What kind of information? She paused. Copies of private messages, some altered. Claims that you've been unfaithful. I froze. That's not true. I believe you, she said softly. But your husband needs to know before it spreads further. I hung up, heart pounding. Evelyn, it had to be her. She'd promised I'd regret humiliating her. And now she was making good on that promise. When Daniel came home that evening, he looked torn apart. Mom called me, he said quietly. She told me someone sent emails about you, that you've been seeing another man. I stared at him, shocked. And you believe her? He shook his head. No, I don't know what to believe anymore, Amelia. The timing, the messages. I felt tears prick my eyes, not because I was hurt by the accusation, but because I realized Evelyn had just attacked the one thing she couldn't control, our trust. I walked away silently, leaving him to his doubts. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind raced, trying to piece together how she'd done it. And then I remembered in the lunch. She must have taken photos, maybe even recorded me. She wanted revenge, but this time she'd crossed a line. So I decided to fight back, not with anger, but with truth. The next morning, I went to Daniel's office. His colleagues looked uncomfortable as I walked in, whispers buzzing around me. I stood tall, holding a folder in my hand. "May I have a moment with everyone?" I asked, my voice calm but strong. Daniel looked up, surprised. "Amelia, what are you doing here?" "Clearing my name," I said. I opened the folder and displayed a series of screenshots, all carefully printed and verified. These are the same messages Evelyn used to accuse me. But look here, I zoomed in on the metadata, all sent from an account created 2 days after her birthday. The sender's IP address traces back to her home Wi-Fi. Gasps filled the room. Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can confirm this yourself," I said, placing a report from a tech investigator I'd quietly hired after the lunch. "She forged everything." Daniel stood up slowly, face pale. She did this?" I nodded, because she couldn't stand losing control. The room fell silent. Even his manager looked speechless. I didn't need to say more, why the truth was laid bare for everyone to see. That evening, Daniel confronted his mother. I didn't go with him, but I heard every word through the speakerphone he left on the counter. "Mom," he said, voice trembling with anger. "How could you do this? You tried to ruin my wife's life." Evelyn's voice was cold, defensive. "I did it for you, Daniel." "She's changing you. You're not the man you were before her." "I'm not," he said firmly. "I'm finally the man I should have been. One who sees through your manipulation." There was a pause, then a choked sob. "You're choosing her over me." Daniel's reply was quiet but final. "No, Mom, I'm choosing truth over lies." He hung up. Later that night, he came to me, his eyes red but clear. "I'm so sorry, Amelia. I should have protected you sooner." I looked at him for a long time, then said softly, "The truth has a way of protecting itself. We just have to stop hiding from it." He nodded, pulling me into his arms. For the first time in months, I felt his embrace not as an apology, but as a promise. Still deep inside, I knew this wasn't just about winning. It was about showing Evelyn that no one, not even her, could destroy the peace I'd rebuilt. And when she realized she'd lost not just her pride, but her son's trust, that was the real revenge. Weeks passed after the confrontation. Evelyn didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't even show up at family gatherings. The once untouchable matriarch of the Harris family had gone completely silent. At first, I felt uneasy. There was no satisfaction in destroying someone, even if they had tried to destroy me. But as time went on, that silence turned into something else. Peace. For the first time since I'd married Daniel, there were no arguments, no judgmental comments, no manipulation wrapped in polite smiles. Just quiet. Daniel was different too, softer, more present. He started cooking dinner with me, joining me on walks, asking about my work like he used to. It was like the fog that had surrounded our marriage had finally lifted. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset on our porch, he said quietly, "You know, I used to think keeping Mom happy was the same as keeping peace. But now I see how wrong I was. You don't keep peace by surrendering to someone's cruelty. You build it by standing for what's right." I smiled gently. Sometimes standing up for yourself is an act of kindness, to yourself. He nodded, his eyes full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Pride. Not for me, but for us. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail. No name on the envelope, just my address written in familiar, elegant handwriting. Evelyn's. I hesitated before opening it, my heart thudding with a mix of caution and curiosity. Inside there was no apology. Not the kind one might expect anyway. Just a single page, handwritten with shaky lines. "Amelia, you may not believe me, but I never wanted things to go this far. I acted out of fear. Fear of losing Daniel, fear of being forgotten. You took him from me, but maybe you also gave him back to himself. I don't know if I can ever face you again, but I hope one day you'll understand. Evelyn." I read it twice. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption. But it was something real. And for the first time, I saw her not as my enemy, but as a woman who'd spent her life mistaking control for love. That weekend, Daniel visited her. When he came back, he looked relieved. "She's different," he said. "She's quieter." She even asked how you were. I smiled faintly. "That's a start." He took my hand. "Do you ever regret what happened?" I thought for a moment, gazing at the fading light. No, because if I hadn't canceled that dinner, she would have kept treating me like I didn't exist. Sometimes you have to draw a line, not to hurt others, but to remind them that you're here, that you matter. Daniel nodded slowly. "You taught both of us that." A few months later, something unexpected happened. Evelyn invited us to her home for a small family lunch. No grand gestures, no conditions. Just lunch. When we arrived, she greeted me at the door with a faint smile. "Amelia," she said softly, "thank you for coming." It wasn't warm, but it was sincere. I returned the smile. "Thank you for inviting me." We sat together, awkward at first, but gradually the tension melted. She asked about my work, my favorite recipes, simple things that once felt impossible between us. For the first time, I saw her trying, not pretending. And in that moment, I realized revenge didn't always have to be cruel. Sometimes the sweetest revenge was simply growth. Because when you rise above someone's cruelty, you show them what true strength looks like, not through anger, but through grace. That night, as Daniel and I drove home, he squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Amelia. You changed everything." I smiled, watching the city lights pass by. "No, Daniel. I just refused to be invisible."